the reality is it actually is kind of simpler theoretically, but also can be a whole lot more expensive in doing so as well. So there's this idea that I can throw money at this problem and potentially solve it. And also that everyone kind of just like, it's a thing that everyone's talking about online. But the reality is the more that you start to, if you were to have a cup that is broken at the bottom, there's no point in continuing to try to fill the cup. It's just going to continue to always be empty. And so we have to make sure that we are looking at this appropriately and what the actual broken sales process is. So you're not wasting effort and dollars, those hard-earned dollars that you're earning in the agency, that you're just wasting it trying to bring in more leads that is not actually producing the effort that you're looking for. So what you have to be going through and thinking about is what is the conversion rate that you have from the initial eyeball to the actual lead, and then from MQL or SQL to an actual close. So when agencies hit a revenue plateau or they're trying to unlock growth, the default answer typically is we need more leads. And in an earlier episode this season, we were talking about revenue plateaus. And one of the things that came up in that episode is this distinction between leads and sales as a problem. And so we wanted to talk about how to go about the diagnosis of that problem a little bit more in depth in this episode, allowing for you as like a continuation of that revenue plateau conversation. But the thing that I wanted to have fully clarified, more often than not, the problem isn't just the lead volume. It's how those leads are being handled, how you're going through the actual sales process, how you're following up, how you're qualifying them. The conversation that is ensuing is usually the silent killer of that revenue growth and creating that stagnation. And so in this episode, Darren and I are going to unpack how to go about diagnosing whether you have a lead problem, whether you have a sales problem, or even potentially both, and how to go about what effort you should be doing to focus your effort to maximize the amount of impact that you're having for your own growth. The reality of why, and I want to just talk about, to start off with, why I see this default ultimately happening. And I think it happens because of one of two reasons. One, because there's so much being talked about online about leads. And I think that the perception of solving a lead gen problem feels simpler than solving every single little tiny little piece that happens throughout the entire marketing and sales funnel. And the reality is it actually is kind of simpler theoretically, but also can be a whole lot more expensive in doing so as well. So there's this idea that I can throw money at this problem and potentially solve it. And also that everyone kind of just like, it's a thing that everyone's talking about online. But the reality is the more that you start to, if you were to have a cup that is broken at the bottom, there's no point in continuing to try to fill the cup. It's just going to continue to always be empty. And so we have to make sure that we are looking at this appropriately and what the actual broken sales process is. So you're not wasting effort and dollars, those hard-earned dollars that you're earning in the agency, that you're just wasting it trying to bring in more leads that is not actually producing the effort that you're looking for. So what you have to be going through and thinking about is what is the conversion rate that you have from the initial eyeball to the actual lead, and then from MQL or SQL to an actual close. So what is the conversion rate throughout each different step? And then just holistically, what is the conversion rate from top to bottom?
Yeah, I think that leads is just the easiest thing to blame, right? Because it feels external, right? It's just something that's kind of like more so like out of my control versus like, oh, I need to tighten up my sales process. I need to fix these things here, these little onesie twosie things here, or be able to articulate my value better. Or it's not so much like it's something that's out of my hands is what some people think. And right, and they come to us, they complain like, hey, like, listen, it's like, I don't know, there's not too many people out here. Like, I don't know what it is, right? And then also, I think another large problem is that people don't know their numbers, right? So you don't even know if leads is actually the problem because you don't know your overall sales process numbers. You don't have your pipeline structured in a way where you can see the actual lead come through and filter through your overall pipeline to see whether or not they were somebody that was even viable or what part of the process they left off at. Like, they don't have those metrics, right? It's more so that stick your finger in your mouth and is it the, okay, cool. Like, It's just the wind is blowing left. Maybe it's the market, maybe it's this, and it's like no, there's a lot of different factors that play a part in you actually gaining that client, right? Was it the qualification? Were they even qualified, right? Did you follow up with them? Did you provide that clarity that they needed? Were you actually a good fit for them? Like there's a lot of different elements that could play a factor in you not ending up with a client. And again, right, kind of to what you said, right? You can have all of the leads in the world, but if you're unable to close them, then what good does it do, right? So I would much rather have a very tight sales process where I can have the understanding of where it is I lost that person in the process to figure out whether it is, just a sales problem or really, in fact, is it not enough leads coming through the door? Because a lot of times, some people are like, oh, you have way too many leads. I mean, not way too many leads, not too many leads, but it's like you have more than
have
enough
too many
leads. You have more than enough leads to get you to what your goal is, right? It's just the fact that you're not able to convert them. You're not able to have them become a client because there's holes in your sales process.
Yeah. You bring up a very interesting point in the fact that it's not being measured. So you're just kind of like guessing what the problem is. And the reality is that guess often means that we are not willing to take that long, hard look in the mirror. But the thing to me that ends up doing is it leaves things to chance. And frankly, I don't know. I do know. I am not personally willing to do that. And to me, it's akin to like, I'm going to walk up to a blackjack table or a roulette table in Vegas and then put my entire business and future on black. Like, are you willing to do that? Is that something that you're willing to do? Because that's effectively what you're doing if you're not looking at revenue generation and sales components that allows for you to have a clean understanding of where the problem actually is. I'm going to quickly just hit some examples of sales problems and then some examples of lead gen issues so that we can start to talk about the nuances between them. But if you've got a high number of leads or enough leads, but low conversion where they're just not converting into revenue, you're not clear on what qualification needs to happen at what specific stage. You are the only person, the owner is the only person that is involved in sales entirely beginning to end. And I'm not saying that that the owner should be replaced in sales in massive asterisks. That typically doesn't happen until 5 to 7 million in revenue. So be careful there. That there's so much customization in every single piece of what's happening. So there's no process. So one call to another is completely different. You end up having leads just not showing up to the following call. That happens frequently. You have loads of proposals or opportunities that are sitting kind of in this limbo. Well, I'm just waiting to hear back, and you've been waiting to hear back for a long time. You don't have a clear follow-up rhythm and timeline to end up actually closing a deal, and you don't have the actual meaningful sales collateral to create for a frictionless sale. So case studies, social proof, metric-oriented delivery that you've done. And so those are examples of sales issues. And then lead gen issues is that you actually don't have a meaningful, clear CRM of any list of contacts that you have. Who are they? What kind of stage are they in that process? That you are entirely reliant upon referrals, but passively reliant upon referrals. So referrals are actually a great resource, but if you're actively networking and working within your referral networks, it's actually okay. But if you're just waiting for someone to come knocking at your door and you're not doing anything proactively, that's when it's a problem. You have no means by which to actually take someone from beginning to end of knowing about your agency to actually having a conversation, that there's no means by which to nurture them. You don't have a clearly defined ICP within that specific marketing channel that you're going after. You're creating misalignment and friction. You don't have any meaningful information for someone to actually evaluate whether you would be a potential good partner out there in the interwebs, making sure that they feel comfortable with you, whether that is a case study or a review online or an editorial that's been written or a quote of you somewhere or a podcast that you've been a guest on that allows for them to feel comfortable with you. That all leads is entirely based on the founder's personal network. And the other piece is the idea that in order for you to actually do lead gen, it's this overwhelm within the agency. So it's just like this constant starting, stopping, breaking of systems and processes. Those are all examples of sales and lead gen issues and the distinction between the two. I'm curious, Darren, any that I said that you think I should dive a little bit deeper into?
I think that there is a couple, actually. I think one of the ones that clients often run against in terms of the sales issue. So let's go with the one that is, let's go with follow-up. And I feel like that one also ties into like proposals and sitting in limbo. So let's go with like kind of a combined one there.
So two things. One, I'm a very firm believer in the whole idea of BAM fam, that you're booking a meeting from a meeting, so you should have the next meeting booked. And like not in like a pressure salesy way, but asking simple questions of, okay, so you guys are going to meet internally. When are you guys going to have a chance to do that? You can do that on Thursday. Well, how about we meet on Monday so that when you guys have some questions, we can go through them. And how does 2 o'clock sound? And you can say something like that that allows for you to get time on the books. The reality of the other piece, that the follow-up component of it, there's one, the reality of statistically speaking that most deals result in 8 follow-ups or more in order for it to actually close. So that's very normal, and you should be following up a reasonable number of times. But know that you have greater urgency, generally speaking, you have greater urgency than they do. So make sure that you don't come off as desperate. And then the other piece is, from a follow-up perspective, is that each one of us, I mean, we all make different buying decisions and in different ways, but the reality is that each one of us, when we're buying something, we are looking online for reviews and understanding whether this product is going to work or is it going to suit our needs and what did other people think about it. And that's a very normal thing to do. And if you are not helping your prospective clients go through that journey of determination of whether they can trust you and what information they should be relying upon to make these choices, you're letting them do that entirely on their own and you have zero impact to that. So again, leaving it to chance. And you need to be thinking about, throughout each different stage in the sales process, what information are they going to need to gather or determine in order for them to feel comfortable. So here's a couple of good examples, is that typically between qualification and discovery, my suggestion is like some type of piece of content. So that could be a blog post, it could be a podcast episode, it could be a white paper, it could be a book, it could be anything. But here's like something that I find to be useful that's along the lines of the conversation we were having. And then in between discovery and proposal, some kind of case study that's meaningful. It's like, your situation is very similar to another client that we've worked with. Here's that storyline that allows for them to, just start to immerse themselves of how you've been able to solve the problem of like, all right, I'm not going to be the guinea pig and I can trust this person. They've solved this problem before. And then finally, in between proposal and follow-up, and generally there's follow-up, in between proposal and follow-up, you're going to have some kind of testimonial video or something that allows for someone else to articulate. So now the reality at this point is that they have a problem that you've identified. They can afford to solve this problem. They trust that you know how to do so. Now they need to believe, okay, well, I feel this way, but did other people feel this way? And did they actually deliver upon the thing that they said that they did? And can they actually fully be trusted? And that generally is going to come from someone else's mouth and not your own. Why people are generally asking for references, that sort of thing, but you can mitigate that before it even ends up really fully coming up in that follow-up conversation by sending that testimonial over that allows for them to experience what it was like to work with you and walking them through that story.
Okay, I like that. And then let's do one more from the lead gen side of it. So for the lead gen side, and I guess you already kind of touched on that one. I was going to say that we're relying on referrals, but you did touch on that one a little bit. Let's go with the overwhelm one, right? So when the lead gen is turned on, like the agency feels like they're overwhelmed and like processes just kind of keep breaking. I feel like that one is something that a lot of agency owners kind of struggle with, because a lot of times it may just be them solo or them and like a couple people, and so like their operations kind of get overwhelmed at a certain point, or the time management portion of it.
So there's one of two things that I generally see happening. One is that they're doing too many different types of lead generation. So in order for them to get going, that they're needing to invest a lot of time. And so processes are not fully defined because there's just so many different types of it. And frankly, I did the exact same thing to begin with. It's like, oh, here's 12 different types of lead gen that I should be doing, and let me do them all. It's like, oh shit, I don't have time for this. So that is the first one, is do one channel, one focus. As long as your ICP is there and there's spend time there, it's a good channel and it will work. You just need to spend some time to actually refine the strategy by which you're utilizing. And then 2 is that they hold on to too much of delivery. So the other piece is they are not having like a baseline amount of effort that happens continually. And it doesn't need to be like a ton of it, realistically, right? If you're not doing any consistent lead gen effort today, maybe doing 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes 3 days a week is a good place to start. And you can continue to make refinements to continue to grow the amount of time and attention that you're putting into lead generation and marketing and sales over time. But you do need to remain consistent, and it's that like starting and stopping that creates a lot of problems for a lot of people. And the reality is you do need to have some kind of like time container in order for you to have attention in the growth of your agency. And so many people are being pulled in loads of different directions from day to day, and they're not actually meaningfully focused in the areas that they need to allow for them to grow. The reality is that if you don't spend enough time in the demand generation component of your business, you will plateau. The piece that I think that is important here is that realizing that new business, theoretically, and unless you're on the sub $200,000 of revenue annually, the reality is that new business should be 20, maybe 30% of your revenue every year. So it isn't the predominant focus of your time. It just really isn't, because most of your revenue should be coming from existing clients that you already have. And so you need to ultimately replace them. But of the totality of your revenue, 20 or 30% should be new logos. And if you are substantially more than that, then there's a separate problem that we have episodes on retention and how to look at that. That is ultimately the problem.
So, question for you on the fact that you think that 20% should be new logos. What if the client is more project based versus retainer based? So they're going out and getting new logos every.
Nobody said that project based should still mean. I mean, there's loads of agencies that are project based that have revenue continuing to grow with one specific client. They are better at being able to sell the next project after the fact. So because you're project based doesn't mean that a client should be constantly replaced. You're just not actually selling the next thing that needs to happen and thinking through, all right, they came in. The reality is that not all clients come in with this exact same stage, but there is, like, as you solve one problem, there's another challenge that then ends up coming up for them. In business, there's forever challenges, and not saying that you need to solve them in perpetuity forever, but you should be able to sell the next project. If you help them with a brand, maybe you're looking at how do you actually, what collateral needs to go alongside that for the rollout. Maybe it's a website, maybe there's loads of different things that you should be looking at. And I'm not saying adding new service, and I want to be very careful with that. I'm not suggesting that you add new services. I'm suggesting that you sell them the things that you do well and what that next thing is.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then, so, I mean, what do you think that the client should fix first? Right, in terms of
revenue retention. You're saying between the two of new business versus existing business, revenue retention, for sure, without a doubt. If you have a problem with revenue retention, you are fighting a losing battle. You're fighting a losing battle. It is incredibly difficult to grow a business while you're constantly having to replace all your revenue. You need to fix that first, 100%.
Yeah, I guess it comes back to the same thing of like is it a volume thing, right? So if you have a leaky bucket, it's hard to fill. So if you're able to close both the bucket on the at the end so that they're not leaking out and you're still able to fill more into it, it will grow your business substantially more than just continuing to fill with a new bucket.
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality of at least how I see the world, is that every single time you're talking with a client is effectively a sales conversation. You might be selling the strategy, you might be selling the creative, you might be selling the deliverable, you might be selling the next project, you might be selling the first project, you might be selling a future idea. There's all sorts of things that you are doing throughout that, and realize where are they in that journey for them. So where exactly in that buying journey are they, and what exactly is the thing that they need to be thinking about or buying for this next stage. So the reality if a project is coming to an end, they are needing to buy the next objective, the next thing that they need to do in order to achieve that larger goal that they have. So what does that actually look like? You need to make sure that you are taking the appropriate amount of understanding of what's happening at each one of those stages and where your conversion is from that. So the reality, if you go all the way down for me in what you're doing and we'll just combine sales into new and existing sales for a moment, but I want you to think from an SQL all the way down to client retention. What is happening in each one of those different stages? And the same thing is true with existing business in your sales pipeline. Is I've now uncovered a new opportunity with an existing client. What is the percentage that I'm actually able to close that business? And that is a lot higher in likelihood. It takes a lot less opportunities, a lot less deals for you to be able to close that revenue. Because typically, and as Darren's shaking his head yes, is that you typically are seeing anywhere between 70 to 80, even potentially 90% of existing business being able to sell those opportunities into another piece of business with that existing client. So you don't have to do as much work. You already have the built-in relationship. You already have the communication cadence. You already have an understanding of how to work with them. The reality is that every new client actually is one of the most difficult times in any relationship because you're just starting to get to know each other. And at that stage, it's actually one of the most expensive stages in business as well. And so the reality is that you have to make sure that you're thinking through the entirety of what that sales process looks like. The other piece that I see happen quite a lot, and there was an example of a client that had gone all the way through from qualification, discovery, proposal, and then follow up to hear from the client that it was just not in the cards of the amount that they could afford to spend. And they weren't even in the same ballpark. And the reality is the problem I ended up pointing out to them was like, well, you should have figured that out in qualification is one that should have been figured out. Is do they fall within the demographic of a person that can afford you or not? And that can be determined based on total marketing dollars that they have. That could be based on revenue. That could be based on the number of team members that they have in marketing. That could be based on the number of clients that they have. That could be based on the amount of investment that they've been able to obtain. I mean, there's loads of different ways of being able to understand what that looks like. But having a clear understanding of what are the core questions you have to obtain in that first phase, in that qualification phase, and each phase, frankly, in qualification, discovery, proposal, and then ultimately follow up and close is what exactly is the information that I have to impart, and then what is the information that I have to extract in order for you to be able to move into that next phase. And realizing that there's a feeling the prospect needs to have at each one of these different stages. In qualification, they need to feel excited that they found the right partner or that this is a solvable problem. In discovery, they need to understand fully the amount of challenges that they're going to have in achieving this, and that they need to feel meaningfully that your agency is the easiest pathway, the least risky pathway for them to achieve it. And proposal largely should be just a revalidation of discovery of here's all the pieces, exactly how it would work, thinking a little bit more analytically. So discovery is the emotional side of that buy, and then the proposal is the analytical side. And then close is just questions, objection management, things that allow for them to fully understand exactly how it's going to work and meaningfully go through the entire system.
Yeah, I think a lot of it really is coming down to that structure and knowledge of the overall process that you're taking them through, right? That whole buyer's journey, right? And so just making sure that you're also attaching data to it. So having that CRM in place can do two things, right? It can give you the notes on the overall prospect as well as let you know where they are in the process of the sale, right? And it'll allow for you to have a speedier follow-up. It'll allow for you to be able to keep track of what you're sending them. And like you're saying, like you have those different checkpoints or milestones in the sales process where you're hitting them with different information, right? Your sales enablement, like those little assets, right? So the videos, the slideshows, the frameworks, the samples, right? And so just making sure that you're able to keep your thumb on the pulse of like where they are throughout their journey, right? And so if every conversation is that selling conversation, or whether it's an idea or whatever, just making sure that you're staying up to date with that list or that notes backlog of like who they are, where they're at, what their fears are, what they're looking to do, where they're looking to go, right? Because if you have that, that's something that you can lean on and reference in future conversations, right? If they become a client, you can use that in the process of reselling them or selling them on that new project, right? And so just being able to structure that and have your data in front of you is going to be so key in unlocking whether or not like it's something that I need to focus on the sales aspect, whether I need to focus on the marketing aspect. And those two also should talk to each other, right? And so they should be able to coincide and learning like, hey, like I do only see 10 leads this month. What's going on? Is that something that's from the marketing side of it? Or is it just, is it just the market trend or so just being able to utilize the data to empower you to make the correct decisions.
The other thing that I just wanted, so we spent a bit of time in the sales side, and I want to hit the lead side as well for a moment before we wrap. The lead piece of it too is, I want you to be thinking about a couple of different pieces. One, is my ideal client typically problem and solution aware and understand where they are and what exactly you're doing top of funnel that is going to be for that type of person, whether they are problem or solution aware. And if there's an education component, that's a lot more difficult of a journey for you. If they're neither problem or solution aware, then from there, right, they need to be able to determine, okay, well, now that I have a problem, now I need to understand, well, what are the potential solutions to it? And then what are the potential partners that could potentially help me solve for that? Who has the right amount of experience? What kind of direction makes the most sense? Do I want to work on it this way? Do I want to try to do it internally? There's loads of different factors of what it is that they are considering. And the same thing is true in your lead gen. The same way that we were talking about in your sales. It's a bit more nuanced depending on the ICP than it is more structured in sales. But the reality is that you have to take them through a couple of different stages and realize, and this is a Dan Kennedy idea, that the reality of what most people think is that you're competing against your competitor, but actually what you are marketing against is apathy. You're marketing against fear that they're not going to be able to accomplish it. You're marketing against them just stagnating and staying in the exact same place and doing nothing. That's actually what you're marketing against. And so and the first stage, the first step, which is a big step for them to take, is they have limited space on their calendar, the same as you. And they are going to spend 15, 30 minutes having a conversation with you to solve a problem. And they're unsure whether they have that time to do so. And you're competing against everything else that is looking for that 15 or 30 minute slot. And know that you are doing that. And so you have to give them a reasonable amount of motivation to do so. So part of it is going to be education. Part of it is going to be making sure that you're poking the right pain points. Part of it's going to be making sure that they're clear that the solution is possible and potentially what timeline it's going to take, depending on the size of the organization that you're going after. But realizing the same thing is true in your lead gen. And please, for the love of God, do not go after 5 channels to begin with. Go deep on one. Pick one and go deep. If your agency isn't growing, you don't need to do everything. You need to do what is that right next thing. And most agencies, frankly, do need some component of sales refinement before they need more leads, that they're not capitalizing on the leads that they currently have, and they should typically focus more on sales refinement before they focus on increasing the volume of leads. But the truth is that they're both a part of the equation. And the key is to diagnose which lever is going to unlock growth for you first, because the reality is if you have more revenue, you have more capacity, theoretically, as long as it's good revenue, you have more capacity, more resources to then solve that problem. So start with reviewing the journey that you're taking people through, from first click on your site or first click on a landing page or first click on social media to close deal. What exactly are the actions that they are taking to get from beginning to end of full signature? And that journey will help you understand what actually is broken and what you need to fix next. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening in today. With all of the shifts in the industry, it is easy to feel overwhelmed or unsure of your next move. So I'm not here to try to sell you anything. I just want to give back and guide you through the uncertainty. Whether you're navigating new trends or just need some clarity, we're here to listen and offer advice. Head to creativeagencysuccess.com/chat to book a free 15-minute chat with an agency mentor who can provide you with a fresh perspective. Let's figure out the best steps for your agency's growth together.